Hello there, good people, and welcome to It's a Shaw Thing. I'm your host, Rob Shaw. We're talking some fantasy football today, my friends, and I'll tell you what, this is going to be a difficult one to discuss because I don't know what happened to LaDainian Tomlinson. Larry Johnson, 2 total yards, not exactly what we predicted, but at the same time, I do have this. 3 players moving on up and 3 players moving down. Let's start off with the signal callers, and maybe the biggest surprise so far, Kyle Orton. Quarterback of the Chicago Bears has been sensational and is worth picking up right now. He still is available in 2/3 of fantasy leagues, which is actually surprising when you consider this. This is a quarterback who's had multiple touchdowns in 3 consecutive games. This most recent performance, over 330 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's got some options to throw the ball to. Rasheed Davis appears to be a legit option. So does Devin Hester. We've all heard of him. He could get the big play, as well as Greg Golson, Desmond Clark, 2 safe options since they're big tight ends. These guys are able to move the ball. Even Matt Forte is getting in on the action as far as receiving the ball. That running back's had a very good year so far. The Bears are a shock when you consider that back in 2005, Kyle Orton averaged fewer than 125 passing yards per game. He's averaging over 200 passing yards these days. This is a great season for him. Go grab him. He has some fantasy value. As far as a quarterback who might not be so lucky, Trent Edwards took a tough hit in Arizona, suffered a concussion. I'm not afraid of the fact that JP Losman is going to steal the job from him. I'm more concerned that Trent Edwards might not be able to just bounce back like this. The fact is that concussions or injuries that do tend to linger. And that being said, Trent Green, one of the great quarterbacks, actually struggled immensely ever since being concussed. I'm not sure Edwards will be able to get back in action after this upcoming bye week. I think it might take some more time. So that being said, JP Losman, suddenly a guy that has some fantasy value. Lee Evans and him do have a nice rapport. That's some good news to offer you. As far as Edwards, nothing so good. All right, now let's talk about the wide receivers. Ike Bruce with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we expected all sorts of names to have big years this year. Brian Johnson, one, going from Arizona to the first option in San Francisco. He got injured. Arnaz Battle filled in pretty well, but I'll tell you what, the number 2 option is really the top option when it comes to fantasy football this year. Ever since that week 2 performance with over 150 receiving yards by Bruce, he's been getting touchdowns ever since. This past weekend was no exception. 2 touchdowns in the book for Isaac Bruce. The old veteran's having a sensational season. You certainly want to pick him up if he is available. As far as a guy you might want to consider dropping, what happened to Jerry Porter? Talking about a guy who went from Oakland to the East Coast. He did not follow the route of Randy Moss. Instead, he got injured during the preseason, wasn't able to get back and right back bounce away. Instead, it looks like Matt Jones is a better option. Mike Walker seems to eclipse him as a better option so far with Jacksonville. Jerry Porter, unheard of this past weekend. Things are not looking good for him. I'm not sure he's going to be able to bounce back for his career. He has no fantasy value. I know a lot of people get excited saying, hey, it's a good sleeper. My friends, he's still sleeping. Finally, let's talk about the running backs as far as a guy that you want to pick up right now, Ronnie Brown. I mean, obviously he's already taken, but you might want to consider trading for him. The fact is, he is an elite running back. It's not just this past week's performance when he rushed for over 120 yards, nor was it the week before when he had 4 touchdowns, or I should say before that bye week, he had 4 touchdowns and a big win. This guy is steamrolling, and I'll tell you what, just look at the numbers last year. Before that devastating knee injury, he was the elite running back in the NFL. The guy's 26 years old, formerly a 2nd pick overall. He's got tons of talent, and finally that potential is translating into success on the gridiron. This is a guy you want to have as your number 1 option in fantasy football leagues. If you drafted a guy ahead of him that might have a bigger name, expected more success, maybe not a bad idea to try to package like a Ryan Grant and Earnest Graham and try to get your hands on someone like Ronnie Brown. As far as someone you want to cut your losses with, I just mentioned him, Earnest Graham. It's not the fact that he had 90 total yards. That's not that bad this past week. The greater concern is the fact that Warrick Dunn, the old veteran, had 87 total yards. That tells me it is a split backfield. You look at the numbers, and sure enough, that is the case. 10 carries for Graham, 11 for Warrick Dunn this past weekend. It is a split backfield. The fact is, Earnest Graham was sensational in the second half of last season. It's a different story this year. Just take a look at that whole quarterback controversy. John Gruden's not exactly the most consistent of coaches. So that being said, Earnest Graham's certainly a guy you hope to have great value with, it maybe in the late 1st round, early 2nd round of fantasy drafts. Right now, he's looking like a bum, I'm afraid to say. Well, my friends, that's all for It's a Shaw Thing for now. We're talking more fantasy football and college football right here at opensports.com.
So you think you can tackle a pro? There's only one way to find out. Click on fantasy at opensports.com.